Corvus Prime smoldered like a planet trying to forget it had ever been alive. 3 days after humanity declared victory, the battlefield still twitched with heat and memory. His medic kit clattered at his side, a familiar weight that felt heavier with every step. Command had already cleared out. Evacuation marked complete. Sweep finalized. All tidy phrases from people who had never dragged a dying soldier through mud and fire. Declan didn't trust tidy. Tidy was how bodies got left behind. Wind kicked ash across his visor. He paused, listening. The battlefield made many sounds, crackling metal, shifting debris, cooling armor, but he had learned to distinguish all of them. He had spent 11 years listening to the difference between living breaths and the last accidental gasp of a corpse. There. Faint. A single, strained draw of air. Declan pivoted, scanning the wreckage. The breath came again, almost too soft to notice under the hiss of a broken plasma coil. He jogged toward the source, bypassing collapsed trenches and shattered drones. That's when he saw it. A ship that did not belong to any war he'd ever fought. It had crashed at an angle, half buried in a dune of burnt soil. Human ships were boxy, practical. Syndicate ships were angular nightmares. This one curved like molten glass, solidified mid-flow. Its hull shimmered with shifting colors that didn't obey light. The break along its side pulsed faintly as if the ship were breathing. Declan stood at the breach, running through the rules he had memorized but never followed. Unknown vessel. Unknown pathogen risk. Unknown traps. Unknown everything. He stepped inside anyway. The corridor was wide enough to feel wrong for the ship's exterior dimensions. Pale blue emergency lighting pulsed in waves, illuminating script carved into the walls that flowed like water or wind. The air carried a faint metallic sweetness. Then he saw her. She lay beneath a collapsed section of crystalline plating, pinned at the torso. Her skin was white, not pale but luminous, like moonlight had hardened into flesh. Long golden hair spilled across the debris. Her ears swept back in elegant arcs that made her look both fragile and impossibly regal. Declan dropped to his knees and checked her throat. A pulse shivered beneath his fingers, weak but real. "All right," he muttered, "you're alive? That's the hard part." Her armor was artistry and function woven together. He sliced it open with his field shears, ignoring the voice in his head screaming about diplomatic incidents. Beneath the plates, burns spread across her ribs, still weeping clear fluid. A deep puncture wound in her side pulsed faintly. The built-in sealant foam had failed halfway. "Sorry," he whispered, brushing debris from her skin. "This is going to sting." He applied sterilization gel, fingers careful but fast. He had no reference for her physiology. No guidelines. No idea how close she was to dying. But medicine had rules that transcended species. Stop the bleeding, clean the wounds, stabilize the patient. Halfway through dressing the burn, her eyes snapped open. Purple and silver swirled together, alive with intelligence and authority. She looked at his hands on her bare skin, then into his face. Her voice struck him like a command coded into the air. "You touched the queen of the Celestian Dominion, human." Declan froze for a heartbeat. Then he exhaled. "With respect," he said, "your wounds don't care who you're queen of. May I continue treating you?" Her gaze searched him, measuring, parsing, deciding. 10 long seconds. "You may," she said. Declan's hands resumed their work, steady as ever. Above them, the ruined world groaned, but in that shimmering corridor, a war ended and another kind of story began. For a moment the only sound in the alien corridor was the soft pulse of the ship's dying lights and the rhythmic rasp of the queen's strained breathing. Declan kept his hands steady even though her sudden consciousness had sent a cold jolt down his spine. The Celestian Queen. The Celestian Queen. Every briefing he'd ever ignored came back in a blur. Unmatched technology. Political leverage beyond comprehension. A neutrality so absolute that entire wars bent around their absence. And now she was bleeding under his hands. "You may continue," she repeated, her voice thinner now, softened by pain and exhaustion. "Good," Declan said quietly. "Because you're in rough shape." Her eyes tracked his movements with unsettling precision as he peeled back another section of damaged armor, revealing more burns and bruising. The gel shimmered across her skin, reacting faintly to her biology. "What is your name, human?" she asked. "Declan Sorus. Field medic. And before you ask, yes, I'm aware I'm violating at least 12 treaties by touching you." She blinked slowly, her pupils tightening into rings of shifting light. "I am not concerned with treaties at the moment." "Great," he muttered. "Let's focus on not letting you die." Her head tilted at the bluntness as if cataloging it. You are unusually calm for someone handling an unknown species physiology. Trust me, I'm panicking on the inside. I'm just really good at hiding it. He reached into his kit for a deeper probe. She winced the moment the light approached her wound. Declan immediately drew back. All right, he murmured. Pain sensitivity is intact. That's a good sign. It is ineffective. Pain means your nerves haven't shut down. That's effective enough. Her gaze held his, searching again. You speak plainly. I've found complicated language tends to get people killed. Celestians do not die easily. You're doing a decent impression. For a heartbeat he thought she might actually smile. He opened a sterile bandage patch, activating its seal. I'm going to press this over the puncture. Deep pressure. It'll hurt. I can withstand it. Doesn't mean you should. Her answer was a quiet exhale. Not surrender, acknowledgement. Declan applied the patch. Her hands gripped the fractured remains of her armor, but her expression barely shifted. You're doing well, he said softly. I do not require comfort. Yeah, well, you're getting it anyway. Her eyes fell half closed. The blue emergency lights glinted off the sweat collecting along her hairline. She was fading again. Hey, he said firmly, tapping her cheek with 2 fingers. Stay with me. Her gaze refocused, sharp once more. Your insistence is unexpected. Consider it my best quality. He finished sealing the burns along her ribs, then sat back on his heels. Okay. That's the immediate danger handled. I need to get you out of here. Somewhere safer. You intend to move me? Unless you want to stay inside a collapsing alien ship on a battlefield crawling with Syndicate scouts. No, she murmured. I do not. Her voice cracked. It was the first sign of vulnerability she had allowed. Declan slid an arm beneath her shoulders and one under her knees. She felt lighter than she looked. Celestian tech again, maybe, or some biological difference he couldn't even guess at. She tensed when he lifted her, fingers curling slightly into his uniform. You do not fear touching me, she whispered. I don't have the luxury of fear. You're a patient. That's all. For the first time she didn't argue. Declan carried her toward the breach, the ship groaning around them as if lamenting the life it could no longer protect. Outside, the ash storm stirred again, but Declan didn't slow. A queen bled in his arms, and for reasons he didn't yet understand. It felt like the universe had shifted. The world outside the shimmering alien wreck felt colder than Declan remembered. The ash storm pressed against his visor like a living thing, claws of dust dragging across glass. Vetriana's weight in his arms was startlingly light, but every breath she took echoed unevenly against his chest. He moved fast, boots crunching through debris that used to be war machines and soldiers and everything in between. The horizon flickered orange as distant fires still gnawed at the bones of Corvith Prime. But 2 kilometers north sat a bunker, ugly, scorched, and stubbornly intact. It would do. Is mobility this common in your work? Vetriana asked, voice faint but stable. Only when people make terrible life choices. Are you implying I did? You crashed a ship on an active battlefield. I'm not implying anything. Despite the pain, her lips curved just slightly. If he hadn't been watching her so closely, he would have missed it. The bunker's hatch appeared through the haze, half buried beneath fallen soil. Declan knelt, lowering her onto one arm while he pried open the rusted mechanism with his free hand. The hatch groaned, offended by use. Inside, the bunker offered a dim corridor, stale air, and the metallic whine of old generators. A perfect sanctuary of indifference. The kind of place that didn't care who you were, only that you were alive enough to breathe. Declan guided her inside and sealed the hatch behind them. The walls vibrated faintly with distant bombardment, but the sound was muted, less apocalypse, more background noise. He eased her onto the narrow cot bolted to the wall. The padding was thin, barely cushioning the cold frame. Vetriana leaned back with regal composure that didn't match the bleak surroundings. This place is functional. That's polite for miserable. I have slept in worse. Hard to imagine the queen of the Celestian Dominion slumming it in a bunker like this. I never said I slept there willingly. Declan cracked a tired smile. Fair. He checked her vitals again, pulse still weak but steady. Her breathing had lost the ragged edge, replaced by controlled inhales she probably didn't want him noticing. Pain level? He asked. Manageable. That's a lie. It is acceptable for the moment. Still a lie. Acceptable lies are cultural diplomacy. He gave her a look. You're not negotiating a treaty with your ribs. Her eyes softened, just slightly, acknowledging the point. Declan went to the emergency storage locker and pulled out 2 ration packs. He tossed one toward her. It bounced off her leg and landed on the cot. "What is this?" she asked. "Dinner. It looks like compressed cement." "You're not wrong." She examined the bar, hesitating for the first time since he'd found her. Celestian sovereignty apparently didn't prepare someone for the horror of human military cuisine. Declan leaned back against the opposite wall. "You're losing energy faster than you're replacing it." She took a tentative bite. Her expression froze. "This tastes like disappointment." "Compressed disappointment," he corrected. "Get it right." Vetriana swallowed with visible reluctance. "Your species survives on this?" "Regrettably." The ground trembled again, a brief rumble through the stone. Vetriana's gaze flicked upward, instinct sharpening. Then she looked back at Declan. "You chose not to report me," she said. "Even when a patrol passed near the station. I said nothing because you weren't a threat. You could have received a commendation. Promotion. Status." "My status is already fried," he muttered. "And commendations don't save lives." She studied him quietly, the bunker lights reflecting in her swirling silver-purple eyes. "You are different," she said. "Everyone is different." "No. You are inconveniently different." He huffed. "You're welcome." Another tremor rolled through the ground, stronger this time. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Declan tensed, listening. Vetriana's expression sharpened. "That is not residual bombardment." "What is it?" She exhaled slowly. "Something coming." The bunker lights flickered. The world above shifted. And Declan realized their sanctuary wouldn't stay indifferent for long. The bunker lights flickered once, twice, then steadied into a dim hum. Declan braced his hand against the wall, listening for the rumble's return. Corvith Prime had no shortage of things that wanted to shake themselves apart, but this one felt wrong, too deep, too rhythmic. Vetriana's ears angled toward the sound, her posture sharpening despite the pain. Orbital activity. Large-scale movement. "Syndicate?" Declan asked. "Yes. Their fleet is repositioning. Preparing another strike. Then we need to stay underground. We may need to go deeper." Declan frowned. "There is no deeper. This bunker was built during the first wave. It's as far down as anyone got before the funding ran dry." "Then it will have to hold," she replied, though the line of tension in her shoulders said she wasn't certain. He returned to her side, checking the bandages again. The fabric clung to her skin with small movements that betrayed pain she was too proud to mention. "Your wounds are stabilizing," he said. "But you're not out of danger yet. You have said this before. And I'll keep saying it until you're not bleeding all over my day." Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile. Something quieter. The bunker shook again, harder this time. Dust poured down from the ceiling in a sudden gray curtain. Declan instinctively threw an arm over Vetriana, shielding her as the cot rattled against the wall. "Not residual bombardment," she murmured. "No kidding." When the rumble faded, Declan lowered his arm. Vetriana looked at him with a strange expression, measured but soft around the edges. "You protect instinctively," she said. "Occupational hazard." "No," she corrected. "That was not occupational. That was personal." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not when the weight of her words pressed deeper than the walls closing around them. He sat on the edge of the cot. "You still haven't answered my question." "Which one?" "Why the galaxy's most powerful ruler was on a battlefield alone." Vetriana inhaled slowly, ribs tightening beneath the bandages. Her gaze moved to the small light panel glowing above them. "For 40 years, she began, "I have maintained the Dominion's neutrality. Treaties, careful words, strategic absence. We stood outside the Great Wars to prevent them from collapsing the entire galaxy." "That sounds noble," Declan said. "It was not noble. It was fragile." Her voice lowered. "A balance built on inaction." He waited. She continued. "I came to Corvith Prime because I needed to see neutrality with my own eyes. Not in reports. Not in numbers. In truth." "What did you see?" "A world drowning in fire," she said softly. "Mothers mourning children. Soldiers killing for ground that held no value. Men like you carrying the dying when everyone else retreated." Declan swallowed. "War's not complicated once you're on the ground. It's mostly loss and trying to keep the next person from becoming another number." "Yes," she whispered. "Neutrality didn't cause this," he said. "The Syndicate did." "No," her gaze met his. Unshakable. "Neutrality allowed it. By refusing to choose a side, we allowed both to escalate unchecked. We gave the Syndicate confidence. Gave humanity desperation. Gave tragedy a stage. Declan leaned back, letting that settle. Outside, the ground throbbed again with distant devastation. You think neutrality was a mistake? I fear it was a cowardice, she said. And that men like you have paid the price for my choices. Declan sighed. Well, if it helps, my career was already ruined before you showed up. Her brow arched faintly. Because you refused to abandon civilians. Yeah, that. Command didn't love it. Then command is foolish. And you're bleeding, he countered. So let's take a break from judging my superiors. Another tremor rolled through the bunker. This one sharper. Closer. Declan's jaw clenched. That's getting worse. Vetriana's voice tightened. They are sweeping the region. We must move. Move where? Below, she said quietly. There is no below. There is, she answered. You simply haven't found it yet. And the ground shuddered again, harder, as if the world were about to split open. The bunker's floor jumped beneath them, a sharp, violent jolt that sent metal containers clattering across the narrow room. Declan grabbed the cot frame to steady himself. Vetriana braced with one arm, teeth clenched against the sudden pain the movement triggered. That's not bombardment, Declan said. No, she agreed. That is tectonic displacement caused by a kinetic strike of significant magnitude. English, please. They are trying to collapse this area. Declan's stomach tightened. He scanned the narrow walls, the aging support braces, the ceiling that already shed dust with every vibration. This place won't hold, he muttered. Correct. Another rumble tore through the ground, deeper, closer, vibrating up Declan's boots and into his bones. It sounded like the planet itself was groaning under the weight of violence from above. Vetriana pushed herself upright, ignoring the pain that flared across her torso. There is a lower level. A forgotten one. This bunker barely has 4 walls, and you're telling me there's a basement? It would not appear on your maps. Why not? Because it was not built by humans. Declan blinked. You've been here before? Yes. Long ago, during the Dominion's initial reconnaissance of the region. We constructed hidden structures under key planets. For observation. This one was never dismantled. And you're just now mentioning this? You never asked. I didn't know I needed to ask if we were sitting above a secret alien basement. The next blast shook the bunker hard enough to drop a light panel from the ceiling. Declan ducked. It shattered on the floor, throwing sparks that fizzled against Vetriana's armored boots. All right, he said, breath tight. Where's this hidden level? Vetriana lifted her hand weakly. Behind that bulkhead. She pointed to a rusted steel plate halfway down the corridor. Declan frowned. That's just a structural support. It is a door. Looks welded. It is not. Declan stepped over debris and placed a hand on the cold metal. It hummed faintly under his palm, too faint for human ears but not for her. Press the lower left corner, Vetriana instructed. He did. The metal rippled. Ripples. Across solid steel. A second later, the bulkhead dissolved into a silver mist. A hidden passage stretched downward, lit by a pale blue glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Declan stared. Okay, I take it back. You can keep all your secrets. We must move quickly, she said. He returned to her side, sliding an arm behind her back. Her injuries protested, but she didn't verbalize the pain. Declan felt the tremor in her muscles and adjusted his hold to lessen the strain. They descended the first narrow step just as another thunderous impact hit the surface world. The lights flickered. The walls groaned in protest. Declan, Vetriana murmured, her breath brushing his neck, this strike pattern, the Syndicate is closer to regaining full power than your intelligence has predicted. Meaning what? Meaning your commanders do not understand what is coming. Yeah, that's kind of a theme. She drew in a shallow breath. Why did you refuse evacuation? She asked suddenly. He hesitated. I had patience. 43 civilians stuck in a collapsed supply hold. Command wanted us gone. I wouldn't leave them. That refusal ended your career. Yeah. And yet you did it. They needed help. That's the job. Vetriana looked at him, eyes dimming slightly as exhaustion pulled at her focus. Declan, you do not choose the easy path. Never learned how. They reached the bottom of the steps just as the surface world roared above them, a sound like thunder tearing itself apart. In the deep, the air shivered. And Vetriana whispered, "We are not safe yet." The hidden passage opened into a chamber shaped like a half-forgotten dream, smooth walls of pale crystalline alloy bending gently inward, illuminated by soft bioluminescent lines that pulsed with the rhythm of a long-sleeping machine. Declan stepped through cautiously, letting the automated door seal behind them with a hush that smothered the distant thunder from above. Down here the war was only a muffled memory. Declan guided Vetriana toward the central platform, a raised dais surrounded by soft benches that didn't look built for human anatomy but would do. He lowered her carefully, mindful of the lingering tremor in her muscles. She inhaled slowly, visibly easing the pressure on her ribs. "This place," Declan murmured, turning in a slow circle. "It feels alive." "It was grown," Vetriana said quietly. "Not constructed. That doesn't make it less creepy. Function does not require comfort." "Yeah, but it helps." She rested her head against the crystalline wall behind her, closing her eyes for a moment. Her breathing steadied again, though fatigue clung to every inhale. Declan sat across from her, leaning his elbows on his knees as he studied her injuries in the steady blue glow. "You're holding up," he said. "For the moment. You need rest." "I need time," she replied. "Rest is a luxury." He pulled another ration bar from his kit and tossed it toward her. She caught it mid-air with surprising grace, then stared at it with the same expression a scholar might give a moldy artifact. "This again," she said. "I promise it won't kill you. It will not improve my opinion of humanity's culinary achievements either." "Nothing does." She took a small bite. The face she made was almost comedic, almost. With Vetriana, even disgust looked regal. "This flavor," she said slowly. "How does one describe it?" "Compressed disappointment," Declan replied. "I see." They sat in the quiet for a long moment, only the soft hum of the ancient chamber filling the silence. Then Vetriana spoke, her voice unexpectedly soft. "Declan, you asked why I came here. Why I walked into the dying breath of a battlefield." "Yeah." "It was guilt." He blinked. "Guilt?" "Yes." Her gaze drifted to the pulsing walls. "The treaties I signed, the ones that were supposed to protect the galaxy, didn't stop war. They organized it, made it efficient, predictable, clean on paper. A ledger of destruction." He frowned. "That's not how it worked on the ground." "No. On the ground it looked like ash swallowing cities and soldiers burying the people they couldn't save." Declan's jaw tightened, memories flashing behind his eyes. "Yeah, it did. I told myself neutrality was noble," she whispered. "That refusing to choose meant refusing to harm. But neutrality was simply choosing to look away. To let others bleed in my absence." She swallowed, the motion tight against bruised skin. "You buried the dying. I buried the truth." Declan leaned back, letting the words settle between them. He didn't try to comfort her. Didn't reach for her hand or tell her she was wrong. He just opened another ration packet and held it up. "Dinner," he said. She huffed, something halfway between a laugh and an exhale. "I confess my sins and you offer this. Look, I don't do speeches. I do bandages, sarcasm, and food that tastes like regret." Her eyes softened. "And yet, you remain. I'm not going anywhere until you're healed." "That is not what I meant," she murmured. He knew. But he didn't say it. Above them, the world rumbled again, deep enough to vibrate the crystalline floor. Vetriana's gaze lifted. "The Syndicate will find this place. Then we'll be ready," Declan said. She studied him a long moment, longer than she needed to. And for the first time since he'd found her in the wreck, she looked like someone who believed she wasn't alone. The tremors eased after a long 5 minutes, tapering into a distant growl that vibrated the crystalline floor beneath their boots. Declan listened for the next strike, the next collapse, the next reason to run, but the deep chamber held firm. Whatever material the Celestians used to craft this place, it didn't care about Syndicate tantrums. Vetriana sat with her back straight, face angled toward the ceiling as if she could see through stone and soil. Her eyes reflected the faint blue glow of the chamber, swirling purple and silver like distant nebulae caught in motion. "They're sweeping the sector," she murmured. "I figured," Declan said. "They're thorough when they want to be." "They're afraid," she corrected. He frowned. "Of what?" "Us." "Of me." Declan contemplated that for a moment, then shrugged. "Probably fair." She didn't smile, but her expression shifted, a tiny, subtle change, like the shadow of amusement flickering behind her sternness. Then her gaze sharpened. "Help me stand." "You sure?" "Yes." He rose and crossed to her, sliding an arm beneath her shoulders. She pushed up with controlled effort, breath catching once in her throat before she steadied. Pain flickered across her features, but she didn't let it take root. "Hold on," he said, bracing her. You're still injured. I am aware, she replied. But I must do something. What? Signal my fleet. Declan blinked. You have a fleet? I am the Queen, Declan. Right. Okay. That's fair. She touched the crystal wall with her palm. Light rippled out in concentric lines, traveling along the chamber like water across a still lake. The entire space thrummed, then responded with a soft chime. What did you just do? Declan asked. Activated an emergency beacon. It is tied to my genetic signature. They will detect it. How fast? She considered him with the faintest hint of concern. Fast enough that you may wish to brace yourself. For WH. The floor vibrated. The air pulsed. Then from somewhere impossibly far above, a dull roar cut through the planet's layers. Declan's eyes widened. Is that? Yes. The chamber lights suddenly brightened, almost painfully, then dimmed to a soothing glow. The fleet has arrived, she said. He moved toward the sealed door. You're telling me they can detect you through a planet? They can detect me anywhere. That's comforting and terrifying. She exhaled softly. They will extract us shortly. How, exactly, does a fleet extract someone from underground? You will see. I'm not sure I want to. But there was no time to argue. The chamber began to shift. The walls vibrated with an upward pull, subtle at first, then unmistakable. An electromagnetic field hummed around them, pulling at every metallic object in Declan's kit. What's happening? He asked. They are phasing the structure. That sounds bad. It is efficient. A low-frequency pulse reverberated through the room, and the walls dissolved into shimmering mist. Declan's breath caught as daylight burst into the chamber, blinding after so long underground. But it wasn't daylight. It was a star. Or something like a star. A colossal Celestian flagship hovered overhead, its radiance stretching across the horizon. It glowed with layered rings of golden-white light, spinning so slowly it looked still, like a second sun hanging over Corvus Prime. Declan stared upward. Holy. Yes, Vetriana said quietly, pride and weariness mixing in her voice. My flagship. A beam of soft light descended around them, lifting both her and Declan from the dissolving chamber floor. Declan instinctively held on to her and she didn't pull away. As they rose toward the impossible vessel above, Vetriana whispered. You are safe now. Declan wasn't entirely sure that was true. But as the light carried them skyward toward the star-bright colossus, he hoped, for the first time in a long while, that it might be. The Celestian flagship swallowed them in radiance. The beam of light lifted Declan and Vetriana through a circular aperture in the hull, depositing them onto a platform made of luminous crystal that adjusted its contours to support their weight. Declan's boots clicked against the surface, which felt solid but carried a faint give, like stepping on condensed light. He'd seen advanced tech before. Nothing like this. Vetriana's posture straightened as the lift disengaged. Her strength hadn't fully returned, but something in her presence shifted, an aura waking back to life inside its kingdom. Even injured, even exhausted, she carried herself like she belonged to the machinery around her. A procession of figures approached, long-eared Celestians in flowing garments that moved like starlight. At their head stood Admiral Decera, tall, severe and radiating barely contained hostility. Her silver armor glimmered with embedded glyphs that pulsed like veins of light. Your Majesty, Decera said, bowing with rigid precision. We detected your emergency signal. Extraction protocols began immediately. They were adequate, Vetriana said. The Admiral's eyes flicked to Declan. Her jaw tightened. Why is the human here? Declan gave a small wave. Hi. Decera didn't acknowledge it. Was he the one who caused your beacon to trigger? No, Vetriana's voice was sharp enough to halt all further assumptions. He is here because he saved my life. A ripple of murmurs passed through the gathered Celestians. Thesara's expression remained carved from stone. Protocol dictates that any alien present at an emergency extraction must be detained for questioning. Or, if involved in sabotage, terminated. Declan sighed. I'm standing right here. Vetriana stepped forward and her voice cut through the hall. He is under my protection. Decera tried again. Your Majesty, allowing a human aboard the flagship is highly irregular. He is alive, Vetriana said, because I will it. The hall fell silent. Even Declan felt the authority in her words curl through the air like a command encoded at the molecular level. Decera bowed again more stiffly. Very well. I will arrange a containment chamber. No, Vetriana lifted her hand. He will not be contained. He will be placed in a medical bay. My medical bay. The Tsar's breath caught. You wish him housed within the royal wing? Yes. That is unprecedented. Then we make a precedent. Declan resisted the urge to raise a hand and say something diplomatic like, wow, let's all calm down, but the atmosphere told him any joke would be a bad idea. Celestian physicians arrived, scanning Vetriana with flowing beams of cool light. They approached Declan next, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disbelief. One held up a small device that hummed as it swept over his arms. His treatments were unexpectedly effective, the physician admitted. Thank you, Declan said. It was not a compliment. Yeah, I figured. After the examinations, Vetriana gestured for him to follow. He walked beside her through the corridor of curved, glowing walls. The flagship felt alive in a way human ships never did, breathing, watching, shifting subtly with their steps. They entered a private medical bay, smaller and simpler than the grand halls outside. Soft lights. Minimal ornamentation. A single diagnostic platform. A room that felt honest. Vetriana exhaled slowly. This is the only place aboard the flagship where no one performs. Declan leaned against the wall. A little quiet goes a long way. She turned to him, her gaze steady. Admiral the Sarah has already submitted 3 requests for your termination. 3? She is persistent. Great. But she does not decide your fate, Vetriana said. I do. He swallowed. And, what do you decide? That you stay, she said simply. For your medical expertise. And nothing else? Pause. A long heavy pause. Then, not only that. Declan's heart thudded once hard. Vetriana's voice lowered. No one has touched me without political calculation in 37 years. Your hands were the first. Silence filled the room, warm, charged, fragile. She stepped closer. This room, she whispered, is the one place where I am not a queen. And you are not a threat. Declan breathed in slowly. Then I'll stay. Yes, she said. You will. Declan had never liked Tuesdays. They were historically unlucky. Supply shortages, drone malfunctions, one memorable incident involving a plasma stent and an exploding sanitation unit. So when the door to his private Celestian medical bay hissed open without the usual melodic chime, he felt the familiar prickle at the base of his neck. He didn't look up right away. He was recalibrating a human diagnostic pad to work with Celestian biometrics, mostly by guessing, and he wanted to finish one more adjustment. But the silence behind him stretched too long, too stiff, too wrong. He turned. A Celestian maintenance worker stood in the doorway holding a tool bag. Their uniform was immaculate, too immaculate for someone working vent shafts all day. Their posture was rigid, balanced. Their eyes didn't scan the room like a normal worker. They scanned him. Declan's instincts fired. He had less than a second. The worker reached inside the tool bag. Declan grabbed the nearest object, a portable scanner, and hurled it across the room with the accuracy of someone who'd spent years throwing medical supplies at uncooperative soldiers. The scanner slammed into the attacker's throat. The worker staggered, choking, and a needle-like weapon clattered from their hand, sizzling as it hit the floor. Declan lunged. They met in the center of the room, crashing into a console that flickered angrily at the impact. The assassin's movements were precise, trained, too smooth to be anything but elite. Declan caught a strike to the ribs, pain blooming sharply under his arm. He returned the favor with a knee to the sternum and a shove that pinned the attacker against the wall. The assassin twisted, bringing a hidden blade into play. Declan ducked, grabbing the closest piece of equipment, a diagnostic wand, and slammed it across the attacker's wrist. The blade fell. The door hissed again. This time the chime sounded. Celestian guards flooded in with weapons raised. And behind them, Admiral the Sarah. Her eyes locked on the scene, then on the attacker pinned under Declan's forearm. She didn't hesitate. Seize the human. Declan groaned. Of course. The guard stepped forward. Stop. Vetriana's voice cut through the air like sharpened light. She entered the room with slow, controlled steps. Her injuries no longer outwardly visible, but her presence was unmistakable. Absolute. Commanding enough that even the air stilled. The Sarah turned, bristling. Your Majesty, the human is clearly involved. No, Vetriana said, her tone quiet but lethal. He is not. Then he failed to report an intruder. He handled the intruder. Declan raised 2 fingers. And I'd appreciate someone handling me because I'm about to lose my grip. 2 guards moved in, not toward him but toward the assassin. They dragged the attacker forward. The worker's disguise flickered, dissolving into the uniform of a palace-trained operative. A Celestian assassin. The Sarah stiffened. Your Majesty, this is an external breach. A failure of the lower ranks. 4 failures, Vetriana corrected. This is the 4th security breach since his arrival. Each time after I instructed you to ensure his protection. The Sara's ears lowered, the closest Celestian equivalent to panic. Your Majesty, I assure you? No, Vetriana said. You do not assure me anything. The room fell silent. Vetriana crossed to Declan. Her eyes softened, not the public softness of diplomacy, but something entirely unguarded. She reached for his arm gently, examining the shallow cut at his bicep. You are injured. Barely, he said. It matters, she replied, voice low. She cleaned the wound with delicate precision, her fingers brushing his skin with a care that made the entire room feel suddenly too small. The Sarah watched with a mixture of disbelief and dread. Your Majesty, she said slowly, the council will not approve his continued presence. Vetriana didn't look up. The council will learn, she said, that there are matters beyond their approval. She finished wrapping the bandage and met Declan's eyes. You saved my life once more, she said. On a Tuesday, he replied. She exhaled slowly. Then perhaps Tuesdays will need a new reputation. The medical bay fell quiet after the guards dragged the assassin away. Only the soft hum of the flagship remained, a steady, living heartbeat that filled the silence with something strangely reassuring. Declan sat on the edge of the diagnostic platform while Vetriana secured the last strip of bandage along his arm. Her touch was gentle but deliberate, purposeful in a way that made the room feel warmer. You did not need to tend to me yourself, Declan said. I did, she answered simply. Because no one else here would treat you with care rather than suspicion. Declan let out a small huff of air. I get that a lot. She tied off the bandage then looked up at him. Her gaze wasn't the commanding, galaxy-leveling one she used outside this room. It was quieter. Human in a way. I will not allow another attempt on your life, she said. I'm used to people trying to kill me. Occupational hazard. No, she repeated, her voice softer but sharper. Not anymore. Something in her tone made his chest tighten, not with fear but with the weight of what she carried alone. He studied her, seeing the exhaustion that lingered behind her composure. You should rest. You've been through hell and you're still healing. So are you, she replied. Yeah, but mine's mostly bruises. Not all of them. Declan froze for half a second. Vetriana? She didn't let him finish. Instead she moved to the window wall that overlooked the star-flooded void outside. The flagship's light rings reflected in her eyes, making them gleam with silver constellations. For 40 years, she said, I held the Dominion neutral. I told myself it was wisdom, balance, peacekeeping. She shook her head slowly. But neutrality was only distance. It was comfortable, safe, and cowardly. Declan leaned back on his hands, listening without interruption. I watched the galaxy burn from afar, she continued. I allowed wars to grow because I refused to interfere. And while I looked away, people like you, people with no power, no armies, no fleets, paid for my silence. Declan stood, walking to her side. Neutrality didn't start the war. The Syndicate. Neutrality gave them space to thrive, she said. And I let them. She turned toward him, her voice steady but her expression unguarded. When you carried me from that wreck, when you tended my wounds with no idea who or what I was, you reminded me of something I had forgotten. You waited. That true power is not about standing above others, she said. It is about kneeling beside them when they bleed. Declan swallowed around a knot in his throat. I didn't do anything special. You did the most radical thing of all, she said. You cared. She stepped closer, the soft glow of the room outlining the elegant line of her face. Tomorrow I will address the High Council. I will end our neutrality. I will commit the Dominion to shielding humanity. Declan blinked. Vetriana, that's going to change everything. Yes. Her voice lowered. It already has. He studied her face, the resolve etched into her expression, the faint vulnerability beneath it. You're doing this because it's right. I will tell the council it is for strategic reasons, she said. Political leverage. Trade corridors. Stabilization imperatives. And the truth? He asked. She held his gaze. The truth, she murmured, is that a human medic chose to save me, not because I was a queen or a symbol, but because I was bleeding. Declan's breath caught. And because of that, she said, I can no longer allow this galaxy to tear itself apart while I watch. He exhaled slowly. You're going to change the course of history. She smiled, small real meant only for him. We will, she corrected. A soft chime sounded from the doorway. A council summons. She didn't look away from him as she said, I expect you to attend my follow-up examination tomorrow. Declan smiled. Some conditions require ongoing treatment. Her eyes warmed. Indeed they do. She turned toward the door, the queen returning to her throne, but paused just long enough to brush her fingers lightly against his. Not a command. Not a symbol. A promise. Then she walked out to end 40 years of silence. And Declan knew he would follow.